Welcome to Celebrity Central, where we peel back the glamour to reveal the grit. Tonight, we're ranking the top 5 movie couples whose on-screen fire masked real-life fury. These aren't whispered rumors. They're verified clashes pulled from memoirs, court filings, and director confessions. We'll trace the timelines, dissect the turning points, and weigh the fallout that still echoes in Hollywood boardrooms. You'll discover how 1,987 dance classic survived giggle-induced chaos, why a 1,993 thriller became a cautionary tale of producer overreach, and how a 2024 domestic abuse drama spiraled into a $161 million federal showdown. By the final frame, you'll see why studios now bake conflict clauses into contracts, and why some feuds birth masterpieces, while others bury them. I'm Your Name. And over the next half hour, we're stepping behind the velvet rope. Buckle up, these love stories come with receipts. TOP5 Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze. Dirty Dancing 1987. Let's travel back to the summer of 1987, when a low-budget dance movie exploded into a cultural phenomenon. Dirty Dancing Times turned a $6 million gamble into $214 million at the box office. Launched the line, "Nobody puts baby in the corner into eternity," and made the lift in the final scene one of the most imitated moves in wedding history. At the center of it all were Jennifer Grey as the wide-eyed baby houseman and Patrick Swayze as the brooding dance instructor Johnny Castle. Their chemistry felt effortless, rough, almost dangerous. Yet the foundation for that electricity was laid 3 years earlier, on a very different set. One that left Grey determined never to work with Swayze again. The trouble began in 1984, on the New Mexico shoot for Time's Red Dawn *, a Cold War thriller where teenage guerrillas fight Soviet invaders. Grey, then 24, later described to Times, People Times magazine, how Swayze would show up late, sometimes under the influence, and pull pranks, like tossing firecrackers into her trailer. In her 2022 memoir Times, Out of the Corner *, she wrote that the set felt like macho madness, and that she pleaded with producers to keep Swayze off her next project. When Time's Dirty Dancing Times came calling, she initially refused the role once she learned he was attached. Producer Linda Gottlieb eventually convinced her that the script demanded a real spark, even if it came from friction. Once filming started in the humid Virginia mountains, the old resentments resurfaced. Swayze, a classically trained dancer who had performed on Broadway, approached every step with military precision. Grey, fresh from drama school and naturally playful, kept breaking into laughter during intimate scenes. The most infamous example is the arm-stroking sequence in Johnny's cabin director Emile Ardolino rolled tape 22 times because Grey's giggles kept shattering the mood. Swayze's 2009 memoir Times, The Time of My Life *, co-written before his death from pancreatic cancer, is candid about his frustration. He called Grey emotionally childish and admitted that her variability from take to take drove him up the wall. Choreographer Kenny Ortega, revisiting the shoot in a 2025 Times Entertainment Weekly Times oral history, put it plainly, Patrick needed every 8 count locked in. Jennifer needed room to breathe. That push-pull became the heartbeat of the movie. The tension wasn't confined to the dance floor. Crew members recall shouting matches during rehearsals. And one particularly chilly, October morning. The famous lake lift was captured only after a heated argument. Water temperature hovered at 38 degrees. Grey, battling hypothermia, still had to nail the stunt, while Swayze's knee injuries from years of stage work flared. Yet something shifted in post-production. The raw edges that exhausted everyone on set translated into a palpable urgency on screen. Critics at the time noted the couple's lived-in quality, never realizing how literal that description was. Grey's perspective evolved over the decades. In a 2022 interview with Times The View *, she teared up, recalling Swayze's audition for Time's Dirty Dancing *, where he arrived in tears. apologizing for times, Red Dawn times, and begging for another chance. She admitted wishing she had appreciated his tender heart sooner. When Swayze passed in 2009, Gray was among the first to speak at his memorial. Visibly shaken, the feud, once a daily battle, had softened into a complicated respect. Looking at the bigger picture, asterisk, Dirty Dancing Times offers a masterclass in creative alchemy. Two artists with opposing styles, discipline versus instinct, collided under pressure and produced something timeless. Studios today study the film when drafting chemistry contingency clauses, recognizing that controlled conflict can elevate a project. The takeaway is, clear friction doesn't have to spell disaster. When a skilled director harnesses it, yesterday's argument becomes tomorrow's iconic moment. And as we'll see next, sometimes that same heat can curdle into something far more toxic. Fast forward 6 years to a sleek Manhattan high-rise, where the temperature between co-stars was anything but warm. Top 4, Sharon Stone and William Billy Baldwin. Sliver 1993. Let's step into the glossy, voyeuristic world of 1993 Manhattan, where a $40 million thriller promised to capitalize on Sharon Stone's post, asterisk Basic Instinct times allure, but instead became a cautionary tale of mismatched egos and unchecked studio power. Asterisk. Sliver asterisk. Directed by Philip Noyce, and based on Ira Levin's novel, about a book editor entangled in a high-rise web of surveillance and murder, starred Stone as Carly Norris, opposite William Billy Baldwin as the enigmatic Zeke Hawkins. On paper, it was a seductive follow-up to Stone's Ice Queen breakthrough. In reality, the production unraveled amid reshoots, rumored bites, and a producer's alleged demand that blurred professional lines into something profoundly personal. The film limped to a $36 million domestic gross, far short of expectations, and a dismal 19% on Rotten Tomatoes. But the off-screen chill between its leads has thawed into a fresh controversy that's reignited debates about Hollywood's treatment of women in the spotlight. The cracks appeared early. Stone, riding high at 35, after crossing legs that launched 1,000 headlines, had her sights set on edgier roles to escape the femme fatale trap. She lobbied hard for Brad Pitt as her co-star, drawn to his raw intensity from Time's Thelma and Louise asterisk, but Paramount chief Robert Evans, the silver-maned showman known for hits like Time's The Godfather asterisk, overruled her. He pushed for Baldwin. Then 30 and fresh off Time's Backdraft asterisk. Seeing in the Kennedy-esque newcomer a chance to mint a new heartthrob, Noyce later told Times The Mail on Sunday Times in 2024 that Stone arrived on set viewing Baldwin as an untested boy thrust into deep waters, while Evans micromanaged from afar, obsessed with securing an R rating over the script's NC-17 temptations. Test screenings bombed the original twist, Baldwin as the killer. So the studio shelled out another $10 million for hasty reshoots, swapping the villain to Tom Berenger's character and filming isolated scenes to minimize Stone and Baldwin's contact. Crew accounts from the time resurfaced in Time's Entertainment Weekly asterisks 1993 deep dive paint a picture of icy detachment. Baldwin reportedly quipped to a grip after one steamy embrace, thin lips, okay breath. While Stone pushed for separate blocking to avoid unnecessary proximity, at the heart of the discord was a profound stylistic mismatch. Baldwin, stepping up from supporting roles, struggled with the demands of a lead in an erotic noir. Reports from screenwriter Joe Esterhazy's 2000 memoir Times American Rhapsody Times, echoed in anonymous set diaries, describe kiss scenes dragging to 27 takes, with Baldwin fumbling cues and Stone growing, visibly exasperated. One particularly lurid whisper claims she bit his tongue hard enough during a close-up to leave him speechless for days. A detail Stone has flatly denied as fabricated misogyny in follow-up statements, though it lingers as emblematic of their mutual disdain. Stone wanted her brother in spirit Alec Baldwin instead, a swap that might have brought familial rapport but underscored her frustration with Billy's perceived greenness. Evans's interventions only amplified the strain. Stone recounted in her 2021 memoir, Times the Beauty of Living, twice times being yanked from the set for vague chemistry consultations. But it wasn't until March 2024. On Times, the Louis Theroux podcast asterisk, that she named him outright, pacing his office in signature sunglasses. Evans allegedly boasted of betting Ava Gardner, before insisting Stone sleep with Baldwin to unlock his potential. "I didn't have to do that with Michael Douglas," she said, contrasting their seamless times. Basic instinct times rapport. Now I'm in the I have to F. People business. The revelation detailed in Times, Variety Times, and Times. People Times that week. There wasn't just a personal grievance. It exposed the era's normalized coercion, where a leading lady's clout met a producer's bravado. The immediate fallout was a commercial dud that typecast Stone further. But the real aftershocks hit 3 decades later. Baldwin, stung by the podcast drop, unleashed a series of X-posts in March 2024, questioning if Stone harbored a lingering crush he'd shunned and teasing a tell-all packed with disturbing, kinky, unprofessional tales. Model Janice Dickinson swiftly rebutted his claim of a post-screen test confession on Times Daily Mail asterisk, calling it invented. The exchange drew fire from Times The View Times panel in mid-March, with hosts like Joy Behar arguing Stone needlessly shamed Baldwin's skills, while Whoopi Goldberg defended the timing as Stone reclaiming her narrative post-stroke, and amid number Me Too's long tail. Today, the feud informs industry panels on consent and casting times. Deadline Times noted in 2024 how it parallels modern intimacy coordinators and serves as a stark reminder of how 90 seconds excess prioritize sizzle over safety. What Times Sliver Times ultimately reveals is the peril of engineering attraction in a pressure cooker when ambition collides with inexperience, and a power broker treats actors like interchangeable props. The set morphs into its own suspense sequence, one without a tidy resolution. Stone emerged wiser, channeling the ordeal into advocacy. Baldwin, ever the survivor, leaned into family legacy. Their story cautions today's executives. Genuine sparks can't be bartered in backroom deals or forced through gritted teeth. As we pivot to our next entry, consider how a downpour in 2004 concealed not just a lover's quarrel, but a full-blown production revolt. 11 years later, another rain-soaked romance hit a storm behind the lens. Top 3, Ryan Gosling and Rachel McAdams. The Notebook, 2004. Fast forward to the summer of 2003 inches, the misty Carolina lowlands, where a modest $29 million adaptation of Nicholas Sparks's tear-stained novel Times, The Notebook Times, began filming what would become one of the most beloved romances of the 21st century. Ryan Gosling, a 2-3-year-old rising from indie grit, like Times The Believer asterisk, embodied Noah Calhoun, the working-class dreamer, rebuilding a plantation house for his lost love. Rachel McAdams, 25, and fresh off Times Mean Girls Times auditions, stepped into Allie Hamilton, the privileged artist torn between duty and desire. Their on-screen connection, those lingering glances in the rain, in the desperate boat ride through lightning grossed $118 million worldwide and etched the film into wedding playlists forever. But behind the lens, the same storm that drenched their characters soaked the set in genuine antagonism. A clash, so intense, it required intervention from the top and later fueled a real-life romance that mirrored the script's arc. The discord ignited early in rehearsals. Gosling thrived on spontaneity, pitching unscripted lines like torching the house to heighten Noah's heartbreak. Ideas director Nick Cassavetes, entertained but ultimately trimmed. McAdams, trained in theater and protective of the source material, preferred the page's precision, worried that deviations would dilute Allie's emotional truth. Cassavetes recounted to VH1 in 2014 that tensions boiled over during a pivotal argument scene with 150 crew members watching. Gosling, mid-take, turned to a producer and demanded, "Would you take her out of here and bring in another actress to read off-camera with?" The request stunned everyone. McAdams held her ground. What followed was a locked-door mediation, where the two unloaded frustrations, Gosling calling her rigid, McAdams labeling him reckless until exhaustion, gave way to reluctant understanding. Cassavetes later described it to Time's Vanity Fair, Times as therapeutic. The kind of raw exchange that bled into the film's authenticity. Style wasn't the only divide. Gosling, method-leaning and still finding his footing in Leeds, lost 20 pounds to chart Noah's aging backward, heightening his irritability. McAdams, juggling her first major dramatic role, felt the weight of carrying Sparks's faithful fans. Yet the breakthrough came post-fight. In 2023 por Esquire por Profile, Gosling reflected on a chance New York encounter after rapping, "I don't know what happened." 2 years later, "We were dating. We were wrong about each other." Their relationship, lasting from 2005 to 2007, produced that infamous 2005 MTV Movie Awards Kiss, a passionate reenactment that flipped the crowd into frenzy and proved the hate-to-love trope wasn't confined to fiction. They parted amicably, citing schedules. But the meta-layer endures the film's central conflict of class and choice, paralleled their own creative tug-of-war. The legacy rippled outward. The 20th anniversary re-release in June 2024 pulled $8 million in its opening weekend alone. Propelled by TikTok montages splicing the VH1 confession with the rain fight, fans dissected outtakes, turning the Scream session into memes about angry sex origins. Gosling, now married to Eva Mendes since 2011, has shared in interviews that she draws firm lines on revisiting old flames. Fandom Wire Times reported in 2024 that Mendes prefers no casual catch-ups with McAdams, framing rare sightings as politely brief. McAdams, more private and selective with roles, told Times Marie Claire, Times in 2023, that the friction was the fire we needed, crediting it for the film's staying power, without dwelling on personal regrets. In the end, The Notebook Times stands as a blueprint for how opposition can forge something indelible. Two young actors, mismatched in approach, but matched in talent, survived a battlefield to deliver vulnerability that still moves audiences 2 decades later. It's a reminder that not all tension destroys. Sometimes it distills. The film didn't just capture a summer fling. It immortalized the messy truth that great love stories often start with great fights. And speaking of survival, our next stop takes us to the unforgiving Namibian dunes in 2015, where the stakes weren't emotional, they were existential. Jump to the desert, where keeping the peace meant more than just stunts. Top 2, Charlize Theron and Tom Hardy. Mad Max Fury Road, 2015. Now, let's venture into the blistering expanse of Namibia's Namib Desert in 2014, where George Miller's long-gestating vision for Time's Mad Max Fury Road Times transformed a $155 million bet into a $380 million juggernaut and a 6 Oscar triumph. Charlize Theron, at 39 and fresh from adopting her daughter Jackson, channeled the one-armed warrior Imperator Furiosa with a ferocity that redefined action heroines. Tom Hardy, 37 and building on Times. Inception, ***'s brooding intensity slipped into Max Rokitansky, the haunted survivor whose reluctant alliance with Furiosa drove the film's relentless 120-minute chase, their screen dynamic wary glances amid exploding rigs. A wrench fight that crackles with unspoken trust earned universal acclaim and a 97% Rotten Tomatoes score. But beneath the chrome and dust, the production's isolation amplified personal fractures into a full-scale standoff, one that left lasting questions about safety, method acting, and the human cost of cinematic spectacle. The powder keg lit during the film's grueling 383-day shoot, far from any studio backlot. Hardy, drawing from his ballet-honed discipline and recent knee surgeries, dove deep into method immersion, growling in character, holing up in his trailer for hours. Emerging feral and unpredictable. Theron, balancing new motherhood with 120-degree heat and full prosthetic scarring, arrived promptly each dawn. Her routine, a anchor in the chaos. The flashpoint came on a sweltering morning in July. As detailed by camera operator Mark Gulnicht in Kyle Buchanan's 2022 Oral History Times Blood, Sweat and Chrome asterisk. Call time was 8 a.m. for a war rig sequence. Theron, strapped into her gear, waited 3 hours while Hardy strolled in at 11. Fine the F.I.N.C. $100,000 for every minute that he's held up this crew. She reportedly erupted, her voice carrying across the dunes. Hardy charged forward in response, his posture aggressive enough to escalate the standoff into shouts that halted production. Gulnicht, who filmed the exchange, told Times, IndieWire Times, in 2022, it felt like two people who hated each other, a sentiment echoed by first assistant Ricky Schamberg, who speculated it bordered on deliberate provocation. At its core, the rift stemmed from clashing philosophies under extreme duress. Hardy's approach staying locked in Max's trauma, nursing injuries that limited his mobility, clashed with Theron's emphasis on collaborative precision, honed from years of ballet and films like Monster. As a new parent shuttling between set and a nearby childcare tent, Theron later confided to Buchanan that the unpredictability left her on edge. Several weeks on that movie where I wouldn't know what was going to come my way. She requested a female producer, specifically Twilight's Denise Di Novi, to act as a buffer, a prescient ask in the pre-Me Too era. Producer Doug Mitchell denied it, citing concerns over Di Novi's inexperience in action logistics, a decision Miller later called understandable but one that heightened Theron's isolation. In a May 2024 Variety Times interview, Miller reflected, there was no excuse for the disruption. He attributed it to their divergent styles, Hardy's damage and brilliance needing coaxing from seclusion, Theron's clockwork reliability demanding respect, yet owned his failure to mediate sooner. Vowing pre-production talks on mental health for the 2024 prequel Times, Furiosa asterisk. The ripples extended beyond the principals. Co-star Nicholas Hoult, playing the Warboy Nux, described the vibe to Times LAD Bible Times in an April 2025 retrospective as like being a kid in the back seat while arguing parents' upfront tense. Uncomfortable. In the same piece, updated for the film's 10th anniversary, Hoult noted how the friction sometimes seeped into dailies, with crew exchanging uneasy glances during improvised brawls. Theron opened up in Times Vanity Fair asterisk's 2022 excerpt from Buchanan's book, I Didn't Feel Safe. It was horrible. We should have been better. Hardy, in a 2024 Times GQ Times profile, pushed back gently on the fear narrative. Charlize is an intense woman, in a good way, but conceded he was overwhelmed. In Over My Head, grappling with the script's evolution from a Max-centric tale to Furiosa's Odyssey, a turning point arrived late in the shoot during a motorcycle sequence with the Vuvolini warriors. Hardy and Theron rode side by side, the wind easing their standoff. Gulnicht recalled in a July 2025 Times/Film Times update, that's when Tom softened in real life. You could see Max and Furiosa becoming a team by rep. Mutual apologies had thawed the ice, paving the way for premiere poise. Yet the scars inform today's industry. Asterisk. Fury Road. Asterisk's Triumph. 10. Oscar nods. A feminist icon in Furiosa belies the toll, now cited in actor contracts for psychological safety writers and intimacy coordinators. Per Times. The Hollywood Reporter asterisk's 2025 analysis, as Miller told Times The Telegraph Times in May 2024, ahead of Times Furiosa asterisk's release, the experience prompted him to prioritize trust building with Anya Taylor-Joy and Chris Hemsworth, ensuring no echoes of 2014's volatility. Theron, promoting her production company in a 2025 Times. People Times feature framed it as growth. We both owned our parts. Hardy echoed in April 2025. X posts amid sequel rumors older. Uyer. Wiser now. Ultimately, Fury Road Times illustrates that genius often extracts a price. Two titans, each brilliant in isolation, generated sparks that lit the screen but singed the souls involved. It wasn't malice, but the crucible of creation reminding us that masterpieces can coexist with mess. Brilliance and damage aren't interchangeable. The former endures. The latter demands accountability. And while those dunes recede, their lessons accelerate forward. Our countdown's pinnacle isn't mere tension. It's a legal labyrinth still grinding through courts. Our Hassone isn't just a feud. It's a federal case still unfolding. Top 1 Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. It ends with us 2024. Our countdown reaches its apex with the most explosive entry yet. A 2024 adaptation of Colleen Hoover's Phenomenon times It Ends With Us*. A $25 million Sony release that pulled in $352 million worldwide by blending floral whimsy with unflinching looks at domestic violence. Blake Lively, 36, and balancing her hair care empire with on-screen poise. Brought to life. Lily Bloom, a florist navigating a toxic romance with neurosurgeon Ryle Kincaid. Played by Justin Baldoni. Sisher, who also helmed the director's chair through his Wayfarer Studios. Their pairing promised empowerment and A-list draw for book fans hungry for closure on Hoover's cliffhanger, but the premiere's split-screen smiles masked a descent into allegations of harassment, orchestrated retaliation, and a courtroom saga that's ballooned into one of Hollywood's costliest feuds, with damages claims topping $561 million combined. As of November 2025, the case barrels toward a March 2026 trial, dragging in A-listers like Taylor Swift and reshaping how studios handle intimacy on sets about intimacy. The unraveling traced back to the film's January 2024 resumption after a SAG-AFTRA strike hiatus, when a tense all-hands meeting attended by Lively's husband, Ryan Reynolds, laid bare her grievances in her December 2024 federal complaint, later expanded into a full lawsuit. Lively detailed a pattern of boundary violations, Baldoni allegedly entering her trailer unannounced while she breastfed her newborn, probing her weight post-pregnancy, and improvising unscripted physicality in intimate scenes without consent. Producer Jamie Heath reportedly screened a graphic nude birth video of his wife during discussions, and Baldoni shared personal anecdotes about porn addiction that left her uneasy. Lively's team demanded an intimacy coordinator and script adherence moving forward. A pivot that, per court docs, irked Baldoni's vision of a raw directorial style. What followed, she claims, was a preemptive digital assault texts from crisis PR Melissa Nathan to Baldoni's circle, uncovered in Times. The New York Times, December 2024 expose, We Can Bury Anyone, included gems like the narrative is crazy good and strategies to weaponize a digital army via Reddit plants, troll accounts, and selective leaks framing Lively as a diva, hijacking the edit. Baldoni's response was swift and sweeping. In January 2025, he fired back with a 224-page, $400 million countersuit against Lively, Reynolds, and publicist Leslie Sloan, alleging extortion through media manipulation, pointing to Reynolds' alleged nicepool jabs in Times' Deadpool and Wolverine, Times' coded mockery, and a $250 million libel claim against the Times for cherry-picked reporting. His February lawsuit info website chronicled a timeline from 2019 pre-production, painting himself as the beleaguered artist targeted by a smear machine. Sloan's texts warning the whole cast hates him were spun as proof of Lively's sabotage. Yet by June 2025, U.S. District Judge Louis Lyman dismantled it all in a scathing ruling, calling the claims baseless and abusive litigation tactics designed to intimidate Baldoni's team missed the amendment deadline on October 31, sealing the dismissal on November 3. Per Times, People Times, and Times Deadline Times, a total vindication, Lively's lawyers declared. Though not before WME dropped him, and Vital Voices rescinded a Feminist Ally Award amid the irony of a film preaching cycle-breaking, the analysis cuts deeper into a web of power and perception. Lively's suit quantifies the toll at $161 million as of November. 7 filings in Times TMZ Times and Times Daily Mail Times. $49 million gutted from Blake Brown hair care sales. $22 million from Betty Buzz drinks. Plus therapy costs and endorsement blackouts tied to the reputational hit. Subpoenas now ensnare Swift over 2,024 texts, allegedly plotting to rally her TS fanbase against Baldoni alongside Hugh Jackman, Sony's Tom Rothman, and co-stars like Brandon Sklenar, who amplified Lively's claims with an Instagram "For the love of God read this" in December 2024. Baldoni's attorney Brian Friedman has decried it as hindsight, hysteria, and salacious lies, insisting auto-deleted signal messages were routine, not spoliation. A November 5 ruling tossed Lively's claims against Texas-based social media strategist Jed Wallace for jurisdictional reasons. A minor setback, her team vows to appeal. At stake not just fortunes, but the Me Too playbook for retaliation in collaborative spaces. The fallout has reshaped alliances and amplified voices. Sony quietly sidelined Baldoni from sequels. Per Times. Variety Asterisks October 2025 whispers. While Hoover distanced herself, refocusing promo on the book's themes. Celebs like Amy Schumer and Amber Heard voice support in Times Us Weekly asterisk, decrying the vitriolic plot as survivor silencing. Lively. In a June 2025 Instagram story, amid the countersuit's defeat, shared, "I felt the pain of a retaliatory lawsuit. So many don't have the resources to fight back." Baldoni. Tearful on his Times, man. Enough Times podcast in November 2024. Framed an intense year as growth, but co-host Liz Plank's December exit cited the allegations as trial looms in March 2026. X threads buzz with numbered Team Blake petitions. And Times Entertainment Weekly. Times op-eds probe gendered scrutiny. Why does a male director's vision get grace, while a female lead's boundaries invite backlash? This saga's cruelest twist is its mirror to the material. A story of spotting red flags in love becomes the alleged blueprint for professional sabotage, forcing reckonings on consent in creative partnerships. Asterisk, it ends with us. Times may catalyze stricter co-star NDAs, mandatory coordinators from day one, and rigorous vetting for woke directors, whose allyship crumbles under fire. It's a brutal irony that underscores Hollywood's slow evolution empowerment. Scripts demand empowered sets. Lively fights on. Resilient. Baldoni pivots to indie recovery. Their clash isn't just tabloid fodder. It's a referendum on accountability. One deposition at a time. As we wrap this countdown, let's circle back to the heart of what we've uncovered. At number 5. Asterisk Dirty Dancing Times showed how playful clashes between Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze forged an enduring spark. Number 4. Asterisk. Sliver asterisk. Exposed the dangers of forced pairings and producer overreach that chilled Sharon Stone and Billy Baldwin's dynamic. Coming in third. Asterisk. The Notebook Times turned Ryan Gosling and Rachel McAdams' on-set storms into a real-life romance and timeless passion. Number 2. Asterisk. Mad Max Fury Road asterisk. Highlighted the high stakes when Charlize Theron's precision met Tom Hardy's immersion in the desert heat. And topping the list, asterisk, it ends with us asterisk, where Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni's tensions have evolved into a landmark legal battle still unfolding. These stories remind us that the magic we see on screen often emerges from real human struggles, friction that can create brilliance or leave lasting marks. It's a testament to the resilience of artists and the evolving safeguards in Hollywood. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Which of these feuds surprised you the most? Or is there another movie couple you think belongs on a list like this? Share in the comments below. If you're craving more behind-the-scenes truths, the latest on the Lively Baldoni trial, or exclusive clips from those contracts, subscribe now and tap the bell so you never miss an update. Next week, we're diving into the Oscar snubs that change careers. Thanks for joining me on Times Celebrity Central, times where the lights fade, but the real drama keeps going. See you soon.